crow. Secondly, he is preparing and going to meet his president at the airport. The way in which I see things and the way in which we've tried to do things as teamwork, OSCE and the EU, together with Bernard Kouchner, is in three phases. The first phase was the phone diplomacy or diplomatic effort that we did from the 7th, 8th, and perhaps even into the 9th of August. The second phase was to go to Georgia together, as we did on Sunday, to get what I would call the Georgian version of the conflict and make a proposal of a ceasefire, to which I will return in a second. And the third phase, of course, and then coming to Moscow to do the same. And then the third phase for me is that the whole issue goes to a higher level, to the visit of the EU President Nicolas Sarkozy and the President of the Russian Federation, Dmitry Medvedev, today. What we discussed was the basic proposal that we have put forward together as the OSCE and the EU. And this proposal starts, of course, with the territorial integrity of Georgia, but has 4 key points. Point number 1 is an immediate and unconditional cessation of hostilities, i.e. a ceasefire. Point number 2 is access for the provisions of humanitarian relief. Point number 3 is the commitment not to use force and to refrain from inflammatory rhetoric. Point number 4 is the withdrawal of all armed personnel to positions prevailing before the start of the current hostilities. And of course, the above-mentioned commitments would be internationally monitored, and we make reference to the UN and to the OSCE. These are just the basic principles which we have set on the table. Now, in the negotiations on the highest possible level this afternoon, most probably we will see other proposals coming from the French EU presidency. What I have tried to do from the beginning, together with my colleague Bernard Kouchner, is to call for an immediate ceasefire and take things on from there. The discussions we had today probably paved the way for the meeting that Mr. Sarkozy and Mr. Medvedev are going to have, but it is now time for the EU to discuss the matter directly with the Russian Federation and the OSCE to try to take its role, which right now is twofold. One, to provide the infrastructure for the humanitarian relief in the region, and then 2, which is to help out monitoring any ceasefire that we can get through. So these were the points that we discussed today, and I'm sure we'll be more than glad to take questions.
Спасибо. Вопрос, пожалуйста. Насчет своего канала, пожалуйста.
Вы знаете, вот из вашей поездки в Тбилиси, что вы сюда конкретно привезли, помимо общих заявлений, может быть, есть какие-то эмоциональные впечатления, периодически с грузинской стороны звучат сообщения, что разбомбили аэропорт. Нормально ли вы взлетели, не было проблем каких-то, подтверждаете ли вы информацию или нет? И, кроме того, я хотел бы уточнить, планируете ли вы поездку в лагеря беженцев из Южной Осетии? Есть ли у вас какое-то уже сейчас впечатление об этих лагерях? Может быть, какая-то информация к вам поступала? Согласны ли вы с оценками, что происходящее там геноцид? Спасибо.
Thanks. On the bombings, I can confirm 2 bombings which took place when I was in Tbilisi or on my way. The first one were 2 bombs that had been dropped close by the airport an hour before we landed. But of course, like good civil servants, they never tell their ministers that this has taken place so that they can land safely. And the second one was a bombing of a civilian navigation center during the night that we were there. But other than that, to be quite honest, we didn't see anything on the floor. Now, what we did then with Bernard Kouchner, and this goes to the second question about refugees and conflict zones, we went to Gori, and in Gori we were shown 2 or 3 apartment blocks that had been destroyed, and then we went to a military hospital. So this is what I have seen so far. I have also a plan to go to northern Ossetia, My president, Tarja Halonen, discussed this with President Medvedev and thought it would be a good idea to see the humanitarian relief situation on that side. And I will most probably take that trip. When exactly it will take place, we'll have to decide, most probably after the meeting between President Sarkozy and President Medvedev. You asked me about genocide. I'm not in the business of making a judgment on either side. At this case, I'm only in the business of trying to find a ceasefire. Analysis and definitions come at a later stage. Any type of strong language at this stage, a blame game, I think, is not beneficial.
Спасибо. Еще вопросы? Пожалуйста, известия.
У меня вопрос к господину С.В. Скажите, как вы оцениваете то, что после заключения соглашения в Тбилиси о прекращении огня был возобновлен огонь в Южной Осетии, и можно ли после этого доверять, в принципе, грузинскому руководству? И второй вопрос обоим министрам. Есть ли сейчас в переговорах между Россией и Евросоюзом и ОБСЕ какое-то понимание того, что грузинская сторона должна документально подтвердить свой отказ от применения силы? Есть ли какое-то движение в этом направлении? Спасибо. Известие.
On the two questions, I think when you're talking about ceasefire, then you're talking about a global ceasefire, which basically means that everyone or anyone who has been firing should cease to do that. So what we had done in the initial stage was to get a signature from President Saakashvili that he will refrain from the use of violence, in other words, move towards a ceasefire. Then the second question, have we gotten an official document on the commitment not to use force? Well, the proposal that we put on the table together with Bernard Kouchner might not be legally binding, but it is certainly a contract, and it is black on white, and it does say that there is a commitment not to use force. So in that sense, I think we've taken a good first step, but there's no legal document on the table at this stage.
Что вы меня еще спросили?
That was the question. On the non-use of force. No. Are you going to answer?
Я могу только подтвердить, что у нас есть общее понимание, что договоренность, и я убежден, что это должна быть юридически обязывающая договоренность о неприменении силы между Грузией и Южной Осетией, является абсолютно неотъемлемым условием прекращения нынешнего этапа конфликта.
У нас здесь финское телевидение.
Да, здесь.
Пожалуйста.
Kysymys Alexander Stubbille. Mitä Venäjä käytännössä ihan konkreettisesti vastasi tähän EU:n rauhansopimusluonnokseen, jonka presidentti Saakashvili jo eilen allekirjoitti?
So nyt täytyy muistaa ensinnäkin, how is the Finnish here? Do we have Finnish interpretation?
No.
Uh,
In English, please.
But I work for Finnish TV News, so it's very important that
What I'll do is I'll answer it in Finnish and then I'll answer it in English after that. So the question was that what did Russia concretely answer to the proposal from the EU side, and I'll do the answer first in Finnish. Ensinnäkin niin kysymyksessä siis on ehdotus, joka on tehty yhteistyössä EUn ja Etyjin välillä. Ja se pitää sisällään 4 perusperiaatetta, muun muassa tulitauon ja joukkojen vetäytymisen. Mä uskon, että ne keskustelut, jotka EU eli presidentti Sarkozy käy yhdessä tänään iltapäivällä presidentti Medvedevin kanssa, sisältää myös tavalla tai toisella nämä 4 pointtia. Ja ne 4 pointtia, jotka on mainittu aikaisemmin tässäkin lehdistötilaisuudessa, niin ne on kaikki sellaisia, joista varmaan löytyy yhteiset muotoilut. Eli mä uskallan sanoa, että varovaisen myönteisesti suhtauduttiin. So what did the Russians respond to the 4 points? I should probably ask you that question. To the EU OSCE proposal, I said that the 4 points that were on the table in Tbilisi and are on the table here in Moscow are probably elements for a solution to the conflict. In other words, the 4 points that I just mentioned about a ceasefire, about a commitment to withdraw the troops, etc. So I'm carefully optimistic that a solution will be found, but my argument is that this paper has now run through its time, and the paper that will be then perhaps discussed between the two presidents will be the valid one, but I believe that the 4 points that I mentioned in the press conference will be in it. Am I interpreting you correctly, Sergei?
Но поскольку я уж оказался здесь, то можно я тоже отвечу на вопрос, как Россия относится к идеям, которые